What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. It's the third Saturday in October, this upcoming Saturday, and people around SEC country know what that means. It's time for the Tennessee Volunteers and Alabama Crimson Tide to take the field against each other. Last year, an epic, thrilling matchup in Neyland Stadium. Tennessee able to walk it off with a field goal. The goalpost got thrown in the Tennessee River. If you didn't see it, I don't know what you've been doing for the past year, but it's time that these two teams get on the field, and this year they'll duke it out in Tuscaloosa. We'll preview the matchup between the Volunteers and Crimson Tide in just a little bit, but I first got to thank you guys for all the support the channel has seen as of late. It has been really, really crazy to me, and I've appreciated it so much. You guys can do a lot to help support this channel. The biggest way being subscribing, ringing the bell so you know when videos get uploaded. But there are more ways than that to help me support my channel. You guys are doing one of them, a huge one right now, just by watching the video. And you guys can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, really anything else you guys are willing and or able to do to help me support my channel is going to mean a lot to me. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and preview this game in Week 8 between the Tennessee Volunteers and the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is going to be a fun one here from Tuscaloosa. Can't wait to see this matchup get on the field. Can't wait to see these two teams duke it out. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the stats that both of these teams have put up so far this season. We are going to start with the 17th ranked Tennessee Volunteers as they are the visiting team. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the stat sheet here. And what does it tell us? Well, it tells us that this is an offense that is nowhere near what it was last season, right? This is a Tennessee offense that was not only explosive, it could generate the big plays, but it honestly could just score at will. And this is the Tennessee offense that has really had their struggles so far this season, and it starts with the quarterback position. Yes, Joe Milton has still played pretty solidly, but there have been moments where Joe Milton just doesn't really seem like himself, guys. 1,264 yards, 10 touchdowns, but has thrown 4 picks this season as well. That was something that Hendon Hooker did a really good job at last year, at not throwing interceptions. Joe Milton has done that. The team also does have 3 fumbles, so 7 turnovers in total on the season. It's a pretty okay team on third down. Actually, it's a pretty good team on third down. Misread a number there, 42% on third down. But again, it's a Tennessee offense that just doesn't feel like the offense of last year, right? A lot of the key pieces that made that offense move last season are gone. And this year, kind of a new look attack. You look at that rushing number there. This is a team that thrives on the ground a lot more than they did last season. You're led by a trio of phenomenal running backs. Guys like Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson are all averaging at least 5.5 yards per carry. And then even Joe Milton there is flashing the talent with the legs. He's averaging 5.4 yards per carry, 173 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, including an 81-yard scamper this season. So it's a lot more of a rushing offense, but they face a very, very tough Alabama defense that we'll preview in a little bit. But speaking of defense, let's go and take a look at this Volunteer defense that, guys, is a whole lot better than last season. Now, they are not forcing as many turnovers as some other teams around the country, but it's a really solid third down defense. It's a defensive line, too, that has been dominant so far this season. They have 2 guys on the team with at least 5 sacks. James Pierce leads the team with 6 sacks, and then Tyler Barron is backing him up right there with 5. And this is one of the best teams in the country at generating pressure to opposing quarterbacks. They are averaging 4 sacks per game, 24 on the season, and it's a Tennessee defensive line that, if you go back and watch last week, absolutely dominated Texas A&M. This is a Tennessee defensive front that is really good in the rush defensive category as well. Only 105 yards per game allowed by this Tennessee team. But the biggest improvement to this defense has been the secondary. This is a Tennessee defense that allowed well over 250 passing yards per game last year. This year, that number is under 200. Really, really good number for them. They're going to want to keep that up against an Alabama offense that, well, that hasn't really been able to find their stride, right? This is an Alabama offense that looks really good one week, specifically in the game there that they just played. Why am I blanking on who they played? Anyway, you guys know what I mean. This is an Alabama offense that looks really, really good one week, And then the next week, specifically this past weekend against the Arkansas Razorbacks, where they kind of sputter and they don't really finish out games or they don't close games like they've needed to. However, there still are some pretty good stat lines to take away from here. I mean, 44% on third down, that's pretty good. You're not turning the football over, only 6 turnovers. The Alabama has played 7 games, so that is under a turnover there per game. And at times, guys, Jalen Milroe has looked really, really good. 1,397 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on 64% completion percentage. Also has been able to get it going with his legs as well. 139 yards and 5 touchdowns on the season. And that 139 yards, guys, does include sack yardage because Jalen Milroe, when I first saw this number, I definitely did not think it was legit. But nope, several sites back it up. Alabama's one of the worst offensive lines statistically in the country. They are allowing 31 sacks this season, 4.43 sacks per game. That is just something that you cannot have happen. Absolutely cannot have happen when you face this Tennessee team that we've already saw defensively that averages 4 sacks per game. You average giving up 4.4. Tennessee may end up having 8 sacks in this game, and that's really, really going to hurt what the Alabama Crimson Tide are going to do. But when you take a look at the rest of this offense here, you got a lot of very good running backs, Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, and when Jalen Milroe is on, this is an offense that is pretty difficult to stop. But when you go ahead and take a look at this defense here, well, this is the defense that certainly has stood on its head so far this year. And you want to talk about a defense that generates pressure. Look no further than the Alabama Crimson Tide's defense as well. They're forcing just one more turnover than Tennessee, but you take a look at that second column of defensive stats, very, very comparable. In fact, these two defenses as a whole statistically are very, very comparable. Now, who do I give the defensive edge to? Obviously, statistically, it's a slight edge to the University of Alabama, but when you go take a look at the eye test, I gave a big advantage to what the Alabama Crimson Tide's defense have done. The defensive front has been absolutely dominant, and Dallas Turner is one of the leading sack producers in the entire country. He has 7 of them. Fellow linebacker Chris Braswell, second on the team with 4.5, and their sack production coming from all over the field for this Crimson Tide defense. They're good at rush defense. They're good in the secondary. This could be one of the most talented secondaries in the entire country. This is going to be a very, very defensive dependent game, meaning which offense can scheme better and beat the opposing defenses more, which leads me into my what to watch for keys to the game, just some things I think you should keep an eye on while you are watching this one. We know that the Volunteer offense can move down the field, and it still has some of the explosiveness that it had last season. We've seen it, but we haven't seen it consistently enough to really be fully confident that they can go on the road and beat the Alabama Crimson Tide. Yes, absolutely, they have a shot, but in order to give yourself an even better shot to win this game, this is a Volunteer team that's going to need that offensive explosiveness. God, that's just a hard word to say. The Volunteer offense explosiveness needs to show up in this game. Otherwise, this is an Alabama defense that is going to absolutely thrive. And these wide receivers are facing a very, very tough secondary, and honestly, I think it's the matchup of the game that you need to watch. Yes, no Brew McCoy for this game here against Tennessee, which is really going to hurt against the very, very good Alabama secondary, but you still have guys like Squirrel White, Ramel Keaton, even your tight end, and McAllen Castles has been pretty big for you guys this season as well. There are some other guys that have stepped up, started to play some big minutes, but it starts with White, starts with Keaton, and I mean, you go against an Alabama secondary that has guys like Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, so many other great, fantastic weapons. Caleb Downs is there as well. Guys, this is the secondary that is loaded with talent, but for the Tennessee defense, you got to continue to generate pressure, but use that pressure to create takeaways, and they're going to get to Jalen Milroe a lot in this game. Make no mistake about it, Jalen Milroe is going to get hit a lot in this game, but when you hit Jalen Milroe, strip the ball, create some fumbles, create some strip sacks, force Jalen Milroe to throw the ball up and pick that ball off, create takeaways, give your offense some extra possessions. Leads me into the keys for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Milroe's going to need to have his best game yet. Not only is he going to need to feel the pressure that Tennessee is bringing, he's going to need to create outside of the pocket. Probably given the way that this offensive line for the Crimson Tide is played, he's going to need to create outside of the pocket more often than not. So he's going to need to make some throws on the run. He's going to need to find his dangerous wide receivers. It starts with Jermaine Burton, the former Georgia transfer, Isaiah Bond, and Kobe Prentice and so many other phenomenal weapons that he has. He's going to need to utilize them. This is a run game that's going to need to give Milroe some support, but Jalen Milroe especially is, you cannot show up with the Jalen Milroe that is iffy or that is up and down or that is here and there. Jalen Milroe needs to be on, and he needs to have his best game of the season. And again, this offensive line is going to get beat. Tennessee is going to create pressure to the Alabama Crimson Tide, and just with the way that this Crimson Tide offensive line is played, Tennessee probably is going to get at least 3 sacks here in this game, but can this offensive line limit the number of times that Milroe gets hit? Can this offensive line keep Milroe's dirty, or keep Milroe's jersey? Somewhat clean, right? We know that Milroe is going to be on the ground. That is a given in this game, but this offensive line has to do everything it can to limit the amount of times their quarterback is on the turf. And then defensively, I mean, kind of the same key here with the Tennessee Volunteers. Let this front 7 dominate as usual, but we know that Joe Milton's going to take some shots down the field. So what you don't see on screen here is you also have to trust your secondary players in those one-on-one matchups if Joe Milton happens to throw a ball here down the field. But let the front 7 dominate as usual. This is also much like Tennessee, one of the best teams at generating pressure to opposing backfields. Now, Tennessee's offensive line is a lot better than Bama's, so that's going to be a challenge for this front 7, but guys like Dallas Turner and others are going to be able to create pressure there to Joe Milton and be able to get into the backfield. Guys, it leads me into my prediction. This is going to be a fun one here, a de facto playoff elimination game as we go ahead and take a look at these two teams. I mean, both these two teams still have hopes to get into the SEC championship game. This game right here could go a long way in deciding that. Does Tennessee have room to pull off the upset? Yes. If you can get down Jalen Milroe maybe 5 times and force a couple strip sacks and takeaways and create extra possessions and short fields for this offense, Tennessee's going to have a Tennessee is going to really benefit from that, and they're going to have a great shot to win the game, but I trust this Alabama defense a little bit too much. I think the defense is going to stand up when it needs to. This one is going to be a little closer than the experts think. I do think Tennessee is well going to cover here this game, but the Alabama Crimson Tide makes the play, or I should say Alabama, the defense, they make a play late in the game to be able to pull this one out as they survive a scare from the Volunteers. Should be a fun one from Tuscaloosa. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Hey, as always, remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video.